The main character admires her image, in which her hair is soft as silk, there is not a single speck of dust on her shoes, and her posture is graceful like that of a princess. However, twirling a pencil around her lips, the girl asks the question that interests her most. What do 14-year-old girls usually draw? When suddenly she remembers the camera that has been photographing her all this time. The main character glances at the maid, who seems to be happy with everything, which means the model will have a delicious dinner waiting for her today. A certain rich lady asked Fredia if she was worried, to which she said no, she was just thinking about what to draw. Outside, observers praise the main character, calling her a real inch, but then decided to remain silent so as not to flatter her. Fredia asks for advice on how to look better on camera, but in reality she feels like a doll. In her opinion, there seems to be a lack of props around, and the hostess and nobles are overly kind. She doesn't understand how it got to the point where she's sitting in the middle of the room as the main clown. The girl suggests returning to the very beginning. At first, walking along the ancient streets, it seemed to her that she was in a dream, because the area seemed completely alien. Fredia blames the novel she recently read for this. She was carefree, admiring the city landscapes, when suddenly a certain aunt picked her up, called her lazy, and asked where she was going. The angry woman scolds the child for not even completing her assignment, but already wandering around the area doing nothing, even though she warned her. But Fredia stands rooted to the spot because she heard the name of the protagonist from a book she knew. The Suspicious Princess is a work about a modern girl who finds herself in the body of an orphan named Fredia. Peering out the window, the main character remembers that this girl appears in the story when the plot reaches the orphanage. She is surprised at how vivid her imagination is. She has only briefly read the pages of this novel, but all the details around her are very vividly displayed. Although now she shouldn't worry about this, because this is a dream, and when she wakes up, she will again find herself in harsh reality. The girl would like to stay here forever. However, the next day, Fredia received a strong shock from the realization that everything that was happening was not some strange dream. After thinking a little, she realized that she was truly now following the fate of the heroine of The Suspicious Princess. This girl was an ordinary orphan, thrown out of an orphanage when she came of age without any support. At 21, she was barely making ends meet, with no hope for the future. But now, the universe of the novel is in the hands of the main character. She couldn't even dream of a more ideal way to escape from her terrible world. The girl joyfully began shouting words of gratitude out the window. She promises to enjoy all the blessings here. But at that very moment, Fredia stopped because she realized that she had not analyzed the ending of her novel. In the story, she was adopted as soon as her soul moved into her body. The only problem was her cruel, adoptive, noble parents. Fredia herself always followed the path of good, which always provoked conflicts with villains. But the girl overpowered them admirably, after which she got married to the crown prince. This news turns the queen against her, as a result of which the crown prince's half-brother injures the heroine, just like in Santa Barbara. But later, Fredia would ascend the throne and join state politics. The main character was upset at how much trouble awaited her. Having started work as a maid, the girl thought that sneaking out of here before adoption was a good option. She is also consoled by the fact that since she knows the full content of the story, it will be much easier to earn money to survive. When suddenly Fredia is called out by her mistress, who scolds her for still not being able to finish her errand. The young lady irritably says that she should have immediately guessed where things were going, after her countless requests to take a nap and rest. The girl was frightened by the woman's words. She promises to sell her directly to Mr. Garmel's farm if she doesn't come to her senses now. Fredia remembers that Garmel is the same nasty uncle who sells food not far from them. She cannot believe her ears, while her mistress believes that after spending 5 years in his harsh conditions, she will immediately stop making mistakes. The girl is angry that her owner considers her a thing that can be gotten rid of at any time. Suddenly, she grabs the woman's leg and loudly vows to put twice as much effort into her already hard work. The young lady ordered the child to calm down, but she did not back down and begged to give her another chance. Thus, the main character began to work as a laborer, no worse than a slave at the shelter, and also act as an icon of the sufferer, trying to attract rich people to donate more money to the shelter. One of the rich men praised the girl's work, calling her a diamond in the rough, and asked what she dreams of. She first said that she wanted to become the owner of the land, but then she corrected herself and revealed that she wanted to be a famous artist. The owner supports Fredia, saying that her wish will soon come true. The young lady thanks the rich man, while he says that he is only happy to serve them. The girl is perplexed by what is happening. After the photo shoot, society praised the rich man who donated his money to the shelter, despite all the gossip that was circulating about him. Some time later, Fredia reads the newspaper. She and other children in the orphanage received sponsorship from a rich uncle, thanks to which they can fulfill their dreams. The main character angrily clutches the newspaper, calling everyone who wrote it scoundrels, because they turned a criminal into a philanthropist. She is furious that she works tirelessly as a cleaner, while her owner spends money on all sorts of luxurious things and only feeds her once a day. Remembering yesterday's dinner, where, unlike other children, she was given a meager amount of food, Fredia calls this newspaper super crazy. But the girl, gathering all her strength into a fist, decides that it is time for her to act. She sets herself the goal of freeing herself from the servile shackles no matter the cost. But she was forced to stop admiring the window when someone ordered her to come over. Walking through the bazaar, Fredia reads the list of what she needs to buy: 2 carrots and celery, and she also needs to pick up clothes from the tailor. The main character thought about why her owner took pity on giving her such an easy job. She thinks of taking the chance and running away. Suddenly, she notices a boy and a girl nearby who call her a pathetic street child who has a hard time without her parents. The 2 ladies ordered the bullies to leave Fredia behind. The women also recognized the main character and called her pathetic. The girls silently listened to their gossip until she remembered the party for which the hostess sent her to the market. Now she can't escape the attention of others. But she meets 2 bullies again who tell her she can't pursue her hobby of painting because it's not for the homeless. The boys asked her why she wore old clothes if the newspaper said that her orphanage received a lot of money. It didn't bother her at all. Remembering her past life, the main character realizes that all bullies are the same, regardless of place and time. Fredia understands that it is better not to react to their insults, so she turns around and leaves. The hooligans threw a small pebble at her head, but she again did not react to this and walked on. They didn't like it, and they decided to throw something more serious at her. Turning around to stop them, the girl saw garbage flying towards her. She was about to cover her face and squint her eyes, but noticed that nothing had happened, which made her think that she had been carried away. But, as it turned out, she was saved by an unfamiliar boy who tells the rude people that even the presence of close people does not guarantee them a proper upbringing. Looking at the face of her savior, the main character cannot understand where such a strong feeling of anxiety came from. The stranger in the raincoat sighs heavily and asks the hooligans why they haven't left yet. The boys asked who he was, to which he irritably replied that even if he said, nothing would change. This angered the hooligans, and one of them rushed at the savior with a knife in his hands. But the stranger deftly dodges his blows, after which he throws his own knife at the very face of the enemy, ordering both to rot. The bullies promised that they would be back, but ran away with their tail between their legs. Main character. Taking advantage of the moment, she thanked the boy for saving her. But he looked at her and asked why she was standing like a pillar. He says she should be ashamed of herself for not being able to stand up for herself. As he leaves, he advises the girl next time not to hide behind the backs of others, but to accept the challenge with dignity and fight back. Fredia was left alone, standing in a stupor, digesting everything that had just happened to her. In the evening, falling asleep in bed, she concludes that this boy was very confident in himself. However, the girl does not remember this happening in the novel. It seems to her that he was an ordinary minor passerby who doesn't even have a name. But his aura is comparable to the aura of the main character. The heroine has no idea. What if her adoption is a ticket to a good adult life? But for some reason, she is scared in her soul. Suddenly, having gathered her resolve, she decides that if this chance was given to her by God himself, then she must take advantage of the opportunity to enjoy luxury. The main character promises herself that by any means necessary to join the ducal family, where she will receive various benefits and win the love of the prince. From now on, the girl moves on to plan B. She will become a girl in whom aristocratic blood will flow. But later it turned out that the luck sent from heaven turned out to be an ordinary temptation of the devil. Several days pass. Her owner comes into Fredia's room to ask if she is ready. She, standing in a beautiful dress, says that she is already ready. The woman sternly says to listen to her again. She reminds the girl that she must watch her behavior today and be a good girl. Fredia says that she understood everything. In her thoughts, she was surprised at the terrible emotion her mistress had on her face. However, there is a good reason for her owner's nervousness. Very soon, the queen herself will honor the shelter with a visit. As soon as this important guest has arrived, the main character bows elegantly to her and salutes her. The queen is touched by the little girl's mannerisms and pats her on the head, while she marvels at her high acting skills. Queen Joan is known for being stingy for herself, but very generous for those around her. But behind her kind smile, there is actually a cold-blooded woman who always follows her own interests, albeit through deceit. In the work, she was shown as a ruthless lady, without hesitation ready to sacrifice her child for the sake of power and money. The heroine recalls that in the end, she chose the eldest prince over her own child and stayed with him. Next to the queen appears her son Herz Allen von Arsel, the protagonist, who was so moved by the article in the newspaper that he personally came to see Fredia. Looking at the guest's face, the girl thinks that at first he doesn't seem bad to her. Herz noticed her looking at him and smiled. Fredia, blushing like a tomato, couldn't believe herself, because she had just fallen head over heels in a second. However, at the same moment she pacifies her ardor of feelings because she needs to behave with dignity. The girl suspects that this happened because of the plot of the book. Suddenly, the main character realizes that she feels the same way as when the unfamiliar boy saved her from the bullies. She shakes her head and tells herself that she was just imagining it then. Fredia notices Herz, who is quietly laughing for some reason. At first, she was taken aback, but then suggested that perhaps he was the hero of the novel. The boy asks the orphan for forgiveness for laughing so suddenly, but she says that everything is fine. Herz calls the main character by name and says that he read about her in the newspaper. He wonders if she wants to become an artist. Fredia swallowed her tongue. Such a high-ranking guest was asking her about the things she lied about in the newspaper. She understands that the worst possible scenario could happen now. He will ask her about her favorite artists or art movements. Before the young milord begins his interrogation, Fredia decides to take action. She says she wants to share something with him. The boy is all attention. The girl says that when she saw herself in the mirror today, she noticed that her hair was quite light. She asks the gentleman if he knows why. He says he doesn't know, and the main character sensationally states that it's because she's blonde. Herz remained standing in a stupor, and the girl could barely contain her laughter, because if she laughed, she would be accused of insulting the royal person. But she was even more surprised when the boy began to seriously think about the stupidity that she blurted out without thinking. The orphan continues to distract my lord. She asks what he ate for breakfast today, and she herself says that she ate soup with bread and found it very tasty. But in response to this, the boy simply looked at her in bewilderment. Fredia supposed that her frankness had become too much even for him. The main character thought that everything was lost and began to curse herself for being too wound up. Suddenly, Herz's laughter bursts out, although he tried his best to restrain himself. He apologizes to the girl, whose manner of communication, in his opinion, is very funny. She is very surprised by his behavior because, as it turns out, the young gentleman is much more eccentric than her. Sometime later, while cleaning the windows, Fredia remembers this prince, in her thoughts calling him a weirdo who behaved very uninhibitedly. For her, winning the favor of a boy with whom fortune was already trying to bring her together turned out to be very simple, since he was happy with everything said. The first clash with Herz happens similar to what is written in the novel. The protagonist, struck on the spot by the prince's kindness according to the canon, immediately falls in love. Fredia, who was carried away by lies, but did not expect that they would start playing along with her, admits that she did not imagine the prince like this. However, remembering the boy's smile, she believes that he is most likely a nice person. The main character is glad that in any case, she managed to arouse interest in her direction, which means that events are going according to the script. In addition, a picture of them smiling at each other was published in the daily newspaper, which means the antagonist's imminent arrival. At this time, a subordinate enters his master's luxurious office and asks how he can help. The man, looking at a newspaper with a photograph of Fredia and Herz, orders the carriage to be prepared for departure at dawn because he wants to visit a place. In the main character's past life, there were only a couple of times when she was dressed up in beautiful outfits, although not for a holiday. Then she received a lot of attention from the orphanage teachers, but she understood why their attitude towards her changed dramatically. Their attitude changed when the shelter was visited by people who wanted to take someone into their family. The girl always hoped that it would be her. However, her childhood was completely spent in despair. She tried to show those who came how good she was for the family, but was unsuccessfully left behind. Watching through the window the carriage that arrived at her house, Fredia decides that now she will not allow this chance to slip away again. Before entering the room of her possible future guardian, she tells herself to put aside sentimentality, because the plot of the book has already sealed her fate. However, the orphan is completely unaware of why her anxiety inside will not subside, because she needs to get ready. The girl slaps herself on the cheeks and tells herself to stand proudly and perceive her adoption as a mutual benefit. She intends to rewrite history. She will continue to play along with her new father until she comes of age, and after concluding a marriage contract, she will run away. Chuckling, the main character thinks that she will gain experience in secular society and start her own startup. She encourages herself one last time that she must hold on with all her might and go forward with a song. As soon as Fredia entered the room, she saw a richly dressed man sitting in a chair and her mistress, who ordered her to greet the guest. From the novel, the girl remembers that this man is Duke Ivan Weiss, who helped his distant relative Joanna ascend the throne. And Ivan didn't stop there. He wanted to marry someone from the family to the prince. But the problem is that the Duke has only one daughter, who was destined to become the head of the family. Why did he need another girl? Fredia understands that she, an orphan, will be easy to feed to achieve her goals. The main character bowed sweetly to the Duke and greeted him, but he did not react in any way, but only thought about something. The man asked the owner if Fredia was smart, to which she replied that she was the most savvy of everyone in the shelter. But the child was not satisfied with Ivan's behavior. She is angry that he allowed himself to ignore her. She boldly turns the Duke's attention to herself and says that she is very glad to meet them, and that she still cannot believe that she will find relatives today. Fredia says that she heard that he has a daughter. The Duke confirms her guesses. Ivan assumes that she and his 15-year-old daughter are the same age, but the main character happily says that she is a year older than her. The girl says that she wants to make a present for the Duke's daughter. The man was interested in this. She hands Ivan a beautiful ribbon and says that this decoration was given to her by the eldest prince when he came on a visit. Fredia admits that at first she wanted to give the jewelry to the Duke, but she thought that it would not suit him at all, so she decided to make her future sister happy. She says that this is her only treasure, which surprised Ivan. He wonders why she shares such precious things with someone. The orphan said dejectedly that she considered it right to share valuables with people who are dear to her. From a past life, she remembers a book about a family of 3 bears, after which she says that she always dreamed of parents, because they are more valuable than anything in the world. Fredia promises Ivan never to be mischievous and not to demand luxury if he accepts her gift. The Duke was interested in the orphan's proposal. He says that her behavior is very commendable, and if she is not lying, she will get everything she needs. The man extends his hand to the girl and advises her not to be greedy, and then she will be happy. The main character was happy about this, and swore to his grace that she would never let him down in her life. The girl always tried not to jump over her head. She thinks that she shouldn't have just given away a piece of jewelry that doesn't even belong to her. But still, Fredia decides to trust her intuition because, after all, the man immediately understood this gesture. The Duke smiled and said that the girl was smart beyond her years. The main character thanked him for the compliment. Then Ivan said that the hostess really was not wasting her time, but was teaching the children well. The woman was very surprised by the compliment in her direction. This also struck Fredia, whom the hostess grabbed painfully by the shoulder. The girl always thought that this woman only knew how to yell and oppress. Blushing, the owner says that she tries very hard to take good care of each of the children. She promises to try harder. While enthusiastically thanking the Duke for the compliment, she didn't even notice how she squeezed the child's shoulder even more tightly. Fredia is angered by this and decides to take action. The girl removes the headmistress's hand and tells her to stop squeezing her shoulder so hard because it might leave a bruise on her skin. The woman was taken aback by this behavior of the orphan and asked what she was talking about. The hostess apologizes to the Duke for the fact that her baby sometimes likes to lie, and she cannot bring her to her senses. While the hostess was showing her teeth to the gentleman, the heroine realized that she was afraid that her bestial behavior towards the disadvantaged would now be revealed to outsiders. The main character decides to make the mistress's fear come true, saying that she imagined something because the headmistress blows away specks of dust from her children. Ivan asked if their relationship was so strong, to which the girl said yes, because her aunt even allowed her to live in the attic. The woman was speechless, and Fredia continued to falsely rejoice in the fact that she lived in the attic, although not everyone was lucky enough to get their own room. The girl says that sometimes it was very windy there at night, and she almost froze to death, but she was happy to experience the life of an unfortunate Mary Sue. The Duke considers the child's words to be true, because she would hardly lie. Fredia willingly agrees, and Ivan. The main character adds that, covering herself with a thin blanket that resembled straw, she immersed herself in fantasy and felt like a wandering knight seeking refuge in a barn. Fredia wanted to continue talking, but the Duke ordered her to stop. He became curious about where the money goes if the shelter has many sponsors. My lord's next words shocked the headmistress. My lord tells her to expect an early visit with checks. The hostess made excuses to the Duke, but he did not pay attention to her, but ordered the servant to prepare all the documents since they were leaving soon. The girl guessed that the director was simply laundering money. Now she is pleased that she was able to take proper revenge on her. Ivan tells his newly adopted daughter that she needs to bring her things to the carriage that is below, and the adults will decide the rest of the issues. The main character happily ran to carry out the assignment, while the Duke thoughtfully looked after her. Sometime later, having arrived at the palace, Fredia almost dropped her jaw when she saw her new luxurious home. While the orphan was amazed at the golden gate and fountain, Ivan asked his subordinate where Catherine was now. The servant said that the Duchess was not feeling well at the moment. He assumed that she was suffering from migraines again, and Lady Isabella was now looking after her. Fredia, who heard this, was upset that she would not be able to meet the Duke's wife today. From the novel, she recalls that Ivan's wife and daughter were against her adoption, which is why a split slowly developed in the family. But the Duke, without asking anyone, did everything contrary to anyone's words and adopted the child. In her mind, the main character imagines what could happen to her in the future. The Duchess will scold her for ruining other people's lives, the servants will give little food, and all her clothes will be old and torn. But she once again convinces herself that she is strong and can cope with any difficulties. Ivan, meanwhile, invited her to look at his new room. Walking down the corridor of the palace, Fredia is surprised at how luxurious it is, and the Duke orders a servant to take her to his new mansion. While the subordinate opened the doors, the girl watched my lord, who walked in the other direction. She assumed that Catherine's chambers were there. However, as soon as the servant presented Fredia with her chambers, tears suddenly began to stream down the orphan's face. The man was taken aback by such a surprise and asked the lady what had happened. She replied that everything was fine with her. It's just that her bedroom is so ideal that she doesn't believe that everything is really happening. Fredia remembers her little room from her past life, which was full of mold and for which she paid a huge heating bill. The girl was very happy when she didn't see cockroaches in her house for at least a day. With tears in her eyes, she says goodbye to her hungry and terrible past, because she wants to stay in this palace forever. The Duke noticed the tears of the main character. He asked what happened, but the servant replied that Fredia suddenly began to cry without knowing why. The man suggested that she needed better quarters, but she said that that was not the case at all, and that she was just very happy. Throwing around the room, the orphan admires the large bed, the huge windows, the beautiful carpet, the dressing room, and the overall beautiful interior. Fredia grabs the Duke's hand and, through tears, says that she is forever in his debt. Suddenly, Ivan and the servant burst out laughing at the girl's behavior, while she didn't even understand what made them laugh so much. Even after sleeping the night in her new king-size bed with a soft mattress, she still can't believe that this is her own room now. In exchange for this, the heroine promises herself to fulfill any request of Ivan, and also vows to be friendly with Catherine and Isabella. Stretching out of sleep, the girl again fell into amazement because she had never slept so sweetly. Fredia happily washed her face with the refreshing cold water, which instantly cheered her up. She then changed into neat clothes, still marveling at how cheerful she felt. Suddenly the girl heard a soft knock on the door, after which she said that the servant could come in. However, she was very surprised that after her words no one entered the room. Then the mistress herself, opening the door slightly, looks out into the corridor, where she sees a maid who is quietly leaving her. The girl was very scared when Fredia told her that she had already woken up and was ready to receive guests. She apologized to the mistress and said that she had not thought because there was no sound coming from the room. The girl says that she is used to getting up early. The main character noticed how red the maid's fingers were while she was holding a basin of water for washing. She assumes that the water there is terribly icy. From the novel, Fredia guesses that perhaps right now the servants will begin to mock her, forcing her to wash with cold water while the nobles prefer warm water. But based on the plot, Isabella's maids bullied her the most. According to the plot, Fredia decided to take revenge by entering into long and unpleasant altercations with the servant and the daughter of the Duke. The girl finds it funny that her peasant habits did not allow this conflict to even begin. The maid tells the child that it is time to wash and get ready, but Fredia says that she has already washed and gotten ready. The maid was very surprised by this and was upset because, according to her, it was very difficult for her to drag this bowl of water. The mistress realized that her opponent would force her to take a shower with cold water. She has no choice but to start a quarrel to avoid this. Having dipped her finger in the water, Fredia was shocked by such a low temperature of the water. She is indignant that even at the shelter she was served warmed. The maid says that perhaps the water seemed so cold to her because she was wearing light clothes. The girl noticed that she was holding up well. The heroine hears a proposal that greatly interests her. The servant says that after breakfast he will bring her several warm dresses. The girl promises to ask Mrs. Isabella for the dresses that she no longer wears, because these clothes will still be better than her current ones. The mistress thanks the servant for this. But in her thoughts she hopes that she will not disappoint her again, because it is better not to humiliate her in this way. The heroine remembered that this was only the beginning of her stay here, then asked if breakfast was ready, to which the servant said that the master had been waiting for her for a long time. She was very surprised by this. Her suspicions were correct. The maid deliberately made her late. Now she understands why the knock on the door was barely audible. From the novel, Fredia remembers that her maid is from the very bottom. This girl believes that this is the only way to win the favor of the owner. The girl understood why she was so angry with her. She was her sudden obstacle. It turns out that the main character is very pleased to feel envy in her direction. In fact, Fredia would have gracefully gotten even with the servants and their behavior towards her, but the Duke would not have liked the extra noise within the confines of his monastery. She decides that she will just continue to go with the flow, after which she grabs the maid by the dress and begs her to quickly take her to the dining room. The Duke, meanwhile, is waiting for his adopted daughter at a table laden with all sorts of goodies. Fredia soon appears at the door and is greeted sweetly and bows to milord. Ivan says that he was waiting for her to join the meal, then invites her to the table. She says that her preparations took a little longer because she is unusual in accepting help. Looking at the empty seats, the girl wonders if anyone else will come, to which the man says that today they are having breakfast only together. The main character smiled, but in her thoughts, she assumed that the rest of the family were not eager to get to know her. But she is not upset, because this means that all the delicious dishes are hers and no one else's. Fredia, licking her lips, admires all the food that decorates the table. She can't believe that they plan to serve breakfast like this every day. Suddenly, she turned her gaze to the Duke, and he said that she should not think about manners yet, because it was not her fault that no one taught her this. The girl thanks Ivan for his understanding, but in fact, she didn't think about manners at all. But since my lord does not insist, she decides that she will not be embarrassed, so she grabs a leg of fried chicken with her hand, which shocks the servants. Ivan was also surprised by this, but expressed his joy that the mistress liked the food. The girl laughs and says that, according to rumors, young girls can chew stones. The man was alarmed by these words. He asks his daughter if her owner forced her to eat pebbles. Fredia at first bewilderedly denied this, but then said that to some extent this happened. While the maids felt sorry for the baby, the main character recalled that it was much easier to break the old hag's teeth on the concrete pieces of bread. The girl continued to willingly put food into her mouth, because when prying eyes were on her, she was forced to pretend even harder that the food was divine. Suddenly, the Duke began a conversation with the orphan, asking if she remembered what she said, how she understood the essence of the attention from the eldest prince. She replied that she remembered, after which Ivan asked her if she understood who he was. Fredia calmly said that she knew that the man was Duke Weiss. She says that she heard that only the emperor himself is higher than him. Ivan asked who told her this. In fact, the main character knows this thanks to the author of the novel, but she cannot say about it. So she says that she read it in a book. The man asked if she really knew how to read, which the girl confirmed. Fredia has to lie. She says that she spied while the other children were studying, and in the end, she succeeded a little. But in fact, the reason was that writing in this world is almost identical to writing in her present world. The Duke believed the girl's words, and then asked if she understood why she was adopted. Fredia replied that she understood this very well, and then Ivan asked her to share her reasons. The girl retells another rumor. Raising a large number of children is a mandatory requirement for high nobles, and while one inherits the title, the rest are used to create connections through marriages. Ivan again finds her knowledge suspicious. He asks if she learned this from her teachers. The girl says that this is not so, but life there taught her a lot. Ivan asks her to tell her where she learned this. Ta says illegitimate children are usually kept alive as insurance, and many orphans actually have wealthy biological parents. They can return to the family if something happens to their siblings, so they were taught manners at the Curtis orphanage. Since Fredia lived in different shelters, she immediately noticed the difference between the Curtis shelter and the others. She immediately understood what was happening there. The Duke praises the girl's intelligence, but swears that he is not her father. He asks if she knows why he chose her. Fredia began to get nervous. Ivan would suspect something was wrong if she suddenly blurted out too much. She decides to play dumb and say that this somehow concerns the eldest prince. The main character is briefly saved from answering by a servant who brought a batch of desserts. He asked the gentleman if they had finished eating the main courses, but the Duke ordered him to wait, since they had not finished finishing their meal yet. Unexpectedly, when it was time to voice her answer, Fredia, without taking her eyes off the sweets, said that this is due to sweets, because the prince loves them. No one expected to hear such nonsense from the lady's lips, so the servant and the Duke simply looked at her in puzzlement. The main character immediately began to apologize for her behavior, justifying herself by saying her thoughts out loud. She began to say in confusion that the prince also had a sweet tooth and liked almost all cakes. Ivan, barely holding back his laughter, says that perhaps Fredia meant herself, and not hares. While the servant and the Duke chuckled quietly, the girl, drowning in a sea of shame, cursed everything in the world, because now Ivan really considers her a fool. But still, Fredia could not take her longed gaze away from the desserts. But when a stern cough was heard from the man, she immediately turned away. The Duke, becoming serious again, but with a blush on his cheeks, allowed the child to try the sweets. The girl thanked the man. She was very happy when she was served a delicious strawberry dessert. The main character was so carried away by the cake that she did not notice how Ivan said something to her. Ivan was so touched by his new daughter that he called her cutie out loud. Fredia heard this and asked my lord again, but he said that he had not said anything important and asked her to continue eating. Looking at the girl, Ivan realizes that she doesn't need to be loaded yet. She must get used to the etiquette and habits of high society. The man hopes that she will not let him down. After breakfast with the Duke, the heroine, staying in her room and not noticing the maid, thought that Ivan seemed not to be a completely bad villain. The girl only manages to pull the mistress out of her thoughts with a scream. The child asks her for forgiveness, and the servant says that she brought the dress as she promised. Fredia thanks the maid, surprised that she completed the task faster than she expected. However, the main character notices that her dress does not look like the freshest, and is also torn in some places. The maid asked the lady if it would suit her, but she was embarrassed to say. The girl asked if there was anything else for her, but the servant irritably said no. The maid gives the mistress a choice. Either she continues to wear clothes from the shelter, or let her sew the dress herself. The girl said that she herself could not sew it up because she was not good at it. Fredia thought her excuse was too cheap. After examining the dress, the orphan said that she was unlikely to be able to sew it up herself since it was badly torn. The servant believes that she will be able to do this. In the end, the main character agreed to try to patch up the dress herself, after which the servant happily handed her a set of threads and needles. The girl wished the lady good luck, and she ran out the door, justifying herself by saying that she also had other errands. Left alone, Fredia wonders whether the servant behaves so familiarly herself, or whether Isabella ordered her to behave this way. The girl doesn't remember reading about this in a novel. Remembering her recent breakfast with the Duke, the lady decides that there is no point in dwelling on what happened now. Then she decides to gather her strength and begin the work that she knows how to do best. Just by putting the thread into the needle, Fredia imagines how her genius sewing skills are already revealed in her talent. Her very first powerful skill turns out to be precise measurements, which she outlines while sitting quieter than water and lower than the grass. Fredia would like to do everything in a few seconds with the help of magic, but although this world is different from the real one, there is no smell of magic in it. However, creating clothes was always easy for her and paid off with interest, be it knitting, sewing, or other areas. In this case, the main character is a jack of all trades. In her past life, she especially enjoyed dressing up dolls in her creations. The girl realizes that the evil maid thinks that she will walk around in torn clothes. And, cutting off the torn part of the dress with scissors, she declares with a proud smile that she will fix it. Peering out the window, Ivan thinks that the baby turned out to be smarter than he expected. By the will of fate, he managed to pull an ace from a deck of cards on his first try. Even if Fredia sometimes behaves immaturely, which greatly amuses the man, she is not inferior to Isabella despite the age difference. An episode emerges from Ivan's memory where his daughter came to his office and said that all his orders had been completed. His only educated daughter, Isabella, has no equal in her ingenuity. She usually doesn't show emotion, but she is more than worthy of inheriting her father's title, and as the next head of the family, her calmness is nothing short of a virtue. The Duke remembers how he listened to the admiration of the teacher when his daughter mastered sciences that were beyond the capabilities of her peers. The Duchess assumed that the teacher was simply putting pressure on her, but Ivan said that it was necessary, because Isabella must meet the requirements of the successor. Isabella herself, without expressing any emotion at all, agrees with her father's words. This girl is capable of much greater things. She is destined to lead the Weiss clan and spread its influence. At least that's how it was thought until Isabella told her dad about her desire to pray with the eldest prince. The Duke is furious that he allowed his clever girl to abandon her roots and become part of another family. Even if his daughter's love for hares is genuine, she is not one of those who will allow her feelings to take precedence over her reason. Ivan remembers Joanna's words that she would be glad to see Isabella as his daughter-in-law, after which he concludes that she is to blame for everything. The queen has already forgotten that it was he who helped her ascend the throne, and now has the audacity to manipulate Isabella from behind the scenes. The Duke understands that this cannot be allowed to continue, but he cannot immediately change his daughter's mind. That's why he brought Fredia, who can easily win the prince's heart. The man turns to a servant named Derek and orders him to ask Isabella to go shopping with Fredia. Derek was slightly surprised by this order. He checks with my lord whether he really wants his daughter to do this. Ivan thinks that this case would be more suitable for his wife Catherine, but he doesn't want to stress her out anymore, because she even refuses to see him and Fredia. The Duke says that the fact that they are the same age will help Fredia buy suitable things. He repeats to the servant that he just needs to tell her to take care of it, after which Derek began to carry out the order. Left alone, Ivan recalls a conversation with his wife, in which she quarrels with him because he is going to adopt a child without her consent. Catherine says that she is categorically against this, as is Isabella, who hardly wanted it. Duke Weiss sadly states the fact that his wife and daughter left him no other choice. Admiring the new dress in the mirror, Fredia believes that in the future she will be able to become a seamstress when she is freed from this world, because this work is no different from sewing outfits for dolls. The main character happily declares that it is time to walk her new dress and look around the house. Walking through the luxurious hall, the girl notices that this building looks more like a palace than a mansion. He thinks that he will quickly get used to it here. Suddenly, the main character notices a lot of people's gazes on her and concludes that they are still not used to her. However, Fredia believes that Ivan's behavior during breakfast was also somewhat strange. She knows that the Duke is going through difficult times now. He needs to reassure Catherine and at the same time not forget about the new child. The young lady walked around the palace until she noticed a portrait on the wall that interested her very much. She thinks it depicts the former head of the family. But below, Fredia noticed something even more interesting, a large book, which turned out to be the Weiss family album. The girl began to look at the photographs, recognizing them as either Ivan or his wife. The main character was very surprised by Catherine's beauty. She believes that even swearing from her lips will sound divine. The next moment, the lady was alarmed by one detail. One of the photographs, in her opinion, looked strange. But before Fredia even had time to imagine anything, a maid suddenly grabbed her by the hand, accusing her of stealing Lady Isabella's dress. She was taken aback by such an accusation on her part. The girl reminds that she asked not to swear if she changes the dress while sewing. But the maid says that she did not give her such a dress at all, and that she tried to find only the oldest and most torn one. The main character was surprised that the girl herself admitted that she deliberately gave her such shabby clothes. The servant, starting to get very worried, wanted to sneak away from the topic of conversation, but the young mistress did not allow her to do this. The maid began to get even angrier when Fredia refuted another of her lies. As she said, there were in fact more dresses for her. Suddenly, Mother Teresa woke up inside the main character, and she tells the girl that she does not need to cry and worry, but can speak out in front of her. But the maid said that she had no intention of crying, after which the child asked her to simply confess all her sins. The girl still claims that Fredia stole the dress. She is surprised at the impudence of the young mistress. The girl began to make excuses. This is the same dress that she gave, only altered. And since the servant considers him so handsome, it means that Fredia's beauty is doing its job. Suddenly, the maid grabs the young mistress by the hand and takes her away, saying that she will still see how she behaves in front of Mistress Isabella. The girl knocked on the door of the Duke's daughter's chambers. Isabella, who heard that it was her servant Karen, allowed entry. The maid again grabbed the orphan by the hand to lead him into the room, but Fredia, who had come up with a cunning plan, began to struggle and scream. Everyone present, including Isabella, looked at the main character in bewilderment. The servants questioned Karen about what she had done. While the girl portrayed a painfully exhausted child, the maid made excuses that she had simply pushed her slightly. Suddenly, the actress, who was missing an Oscar, pretended to be seriously injured, coughing up blood. The maids rushed to the poor fellow's aid, and one of them asked Karen why she threw the child whom the owner had brought. Suddenly, Isabella stopped all the commotion, ordering everyone to stop fighting. The main character is surprised by one detail. In the photo she saw earlier, Isabella's hair was mint color, but now her hair looks like a flaming sunset, just as it was described in the novel. Fredia thinks this color is very beautiful. Mrs. Weiss orders servant Sophia to call the family doctor, and servant Merrily to lay the victim on the bed. She then tells Karen that she better explain herself, which she readily agrees to. After this, Mrs. Isabella turns to the main character and asks her name. After Fredia says her name, the Duke's daughter says that she doesn't like the way one of her maids treats another person so rudely. The mistress says that she is fully responsible for her subordinate, so she asks the orphan to allow the doctor to examine her to make sure that she is okay. The main character began to claim that she was fine and did not need an examination. But Isabella interrupted her by saying that this was not just a whim, but the girl's health and her order. Laying down in bed, Fredia is surprised that it was this demoness who was described in the novel as the annoying villainous Cinderella. In fact, the girl does not remember that the work described any atrocities of the Duke's daughter against her. She remembers that Isabella strained Fredia's nerves to the limit, and when she exploded, she delighted the readers. The heroine remembers that her named sister is only 15 years old. She doubts that she can do any harm to her, who came from another universe. It turns out that the orphan wanted to pretend that she was in pain and play with her feelings, but Isabella turned out to be worse than she expected. The girl wonders whether she can survive the wrath of this noble lady. After examining Fredia, the doctor says that she is fine, only a few bruises remain, for which he will prescribe ointment. Isabella says that this is a great relief for her, then orders Karen to explain herself. The maid, pointing her finger at the main character, declares that she stole the mistress's dress. Cray then says that she was just trying to take her to Isabella and didn't push her at all. The Duke's daughter asks Fredia herself if it is true that she stole her dress, but she, bursting into tears, says that she would never allow herself to do this. The girl explains that apparently Isabella is constantly in her chambers, so she would have immediately noticed the theft. Karen continues to say that she did not give such a beautiful dress to the orphan. Fredia advises the maid to take a closer look and repeats that this is the same dress that she gave her with the words that it was old and torn. Suddenly, Karen became silent and did not ask for help. The main character was surprised by this because she thought that this was Isabella's order. Then the girl realizes that perhaps the war in the novel between her and the Duke's daughter was due to a simple misunderstanding. Fredia decides that she should check on Karen, so she says that she will believe that there is no money in the house. As proof, she cites the fact that the servant forced her to sew her dress herself due to a lack of labor, and also the fact that Karen forced her to wash her face with ice water, most likely due to the fact that the house does not have a heated yard. The young lady admits that she decided to sew the dress beautifully so as not to disgrace the Duke. The maid began to make excuses, saying that this was a pure misunderstanding and she would never dare to tarnish the name of her mistress. But Isabella, having examined the pendant on Fredia's collar, says that she is right, because she is wearing a dress that she recently threw away. The lady praises the main character's excellent sewing skills, but says that she is also skilled in verbal manipulation. While the doctor, leaving, says goodbye to everyone, Isabella admits that Karen is quite hot-tempered and makes mistakes from time to time, but is not so stupid as to mock someone like that. Fredia, who is upset that apparently her named sister is a villain, asks if she is suspected of lying. Sitting down on the bed, Isabella says she was simply complimenting her on her manipulative skills, then suggests that she embellished the incident. The main character thought that the girl in front of her was not at all the one described in the novel, not a trace of that superficial, hateful girl. But even though the girl began to think differently about her, Isabella still seems frightening to her. The lady says that she immediately realized that Fredia was not as simple as she seemed when she heard that Hares fell in love with her right away. But the fact remains that Karen behaved inappropriately, for which Isabella asks the girl for forgiveness. She promises that this will never happen again. Fredia admired the fact that she personally apologized to the peasant orphan for her maid. Now she understood what people call nobility. But the young lady decided that she had to remain cool, so she said that there was no need to ask her forgiveness. Suddenly, the girl realized that she was about to ruin her reputation, but the Duke's daughter seemed very good to her. She realized that she wanted to be Isabella's fan or friend and not be at odds with her. At one point, Fredia puts all her thoughts aside because she remembered that she must set this girl up with the prince. The main character admits that in fact all the rumors about her and Hares are lies. The girl says that they were invented by famous gossips, and perhaps the prince really likes her, but only in a friendly way. Fredia assures that it is nonsense that Hares fell in love with her after a short conversation, but Isabella says that often denial says otherwise. The young lady did not expect that she would further increase suspicion towards herself. She orders herself to finally stop acting like an amateur. Approaching Isabella as if whispering a secret, Fredia admits that Hares is not her type, with the hope that she will not be arrested for treason. The lady asked her again, and she said that the prince, of course, was good, but she was too young to be interested in boys. Then the girl says that perhaps Hares likes Isabella more than her, because she heard that they have been friends since childhood. The Duke's daughter asked how she knew this, to which the arrogant liar replied that the prince himself told her, and that he was very happy when he talked about her. Suddenly, Isabella seemed disappointed by what Hares was talking about her. Fredia was surprised by this, because she thought that she had feelings for him. The next situation struck the main character even more. It seemed to her that the lady sighed in irritation. Fredia is confused because she does not understand what is happening, because Isabella in front of her is not at all the same as described in the novel. Mistress Weiss tells the girl that she was going to find her anyway. She is pleased that the orphan saw her first. The young lady asks if she was really going to look for her, to which she replied that she was, and that Derek said to provide the orphan with everything he needed. The main character was surprised by the girl's words. She knows that these are requests coming from her father. Isabella says that taking an adopted daughter into the house was solely her father's decision, and she and her mother were against it. She then admits that she finds Fredia's presence problematic. She guesses that this is how she's advised not to stick her head out too much. Suddenly, the girl declares that they have nothing to worry about, because she will live as if she is not in this house. Then she says that she does not need to eat 3 times a day, and she can eat in her room because since childhood she is used to eating alone. Isabella, embarrassed, says that she did not want to offend her, and that she should not starve herself. The main character was glad that this girl was kind to her again, and that she could continue to eat normally. But Isabella said that she would not behave terribly towards her, but if Fredia did not want to live in their house, she herself would beg to be expelled. The girl was slightly taken aback by the fact that her friend had become very intimidating again. The Duke's daughter says that becoming a member of the Weiss family was not easy for her, except when she was born into it. Then the girl admits that, to be honest, she doesn't belong here at all. Suddenly, Isabella, extending her hand to the girl, advises her to try to get used to the new place, and then maybe she will call her sister. The main character was again surprised by the sudden kindness of her mistress, but happily agreed with her. The Duke's daughter says she wants to appoint a maid named Leah for Fredia. This girl had never worked as a maid before. Isabella thinks it's better this way since her friend has lost trust in her assistance. Fredia tells her new maid that she is glad to meet her. Leah answers her with a smile. In the novel, the main character believed that the Duke's daughter was behind Karen's tricks, but at least the book described her as a real villain. However, in reality, she seemed calm to the girl and incapable of plotting intrigues with anyone. It looks like the heiress has enough problems herself. As soon as Fredia and her servant are left alone in the room, the latter speaks admiringly about a certain rumor about her affair with Prince Hares. The young lady was not very happy about this, and Leah assumes that a new age-old love is in the works from the moment the gentleman married the madam. The orphan did not understand what age-old love her maid was talking about, so she decided to tell her this unoriginal story of the passion of two lonely hearts. Once upon a time, there lived in a village a man who inherited the title of Duke at a young age after the death of his parents. He was so involved in the affairs of the estate that at the age of 28 he remained single. In terms of love, this man was lonely despite his influence, wealth, title, and unearthly beauty. Many ladies dreamed of him, but his heart remained impregnable like a rock. This continued until a 16-year-old girl appeared on the horizon, barely having time to go out into the world. Or rather, it was the beloved daughter of the Marquis Ludini. A young, ambitious girl vowed to win the heart of a handsome but inaccessible man. The young girl plucked up courage and started a conversation with the Duke to invite him to a waltz. But the man had no intention of letting such a young girl get so close to him, so he asked her to find another companion. No one could have thought that this was just the beginning. The young lady pursued the Duke for 3 whole years, and in the end she pulled off a plan that no lady would dare to do due to her pride. The Marquis flew into a rage when he learned that his daughter's chosen one was 12 years older than her, but in the end he supported his daughter's decision. Under relentless pressure, the Duke had no choice but to agree to a meeting with Lady Ludini, although he still did not give up hope of politely refusing the girl's advances, sending the rings back with the text that he would not accept her gifts. However, during the meeting something unexpected happened, which served as a reason for their rapprochement, and soon everyone was discussing a future engagement. In conclusion, Leah cheerfully says that thus, after long affairs, the romance of the century grew into a long-awaited wedding. Fredia, who had been listening to the maid's story all day, realized that this was how Duke Weiss and his wife met each other. The girl finds it hard to believe that the formidable Mrs. Catherine used to run, head over heels in love, after her fiancé. But Leah says that their Duchess in general is a real sweetheart, and even the gentleman, who was like a piece of ice, melted before her charm. Fredia doubts that this is possible. In the novel, Catherine was portrayed as rude and ambitious, but here they talk about her as a sweet and charming lady. The girl assumes that apparently Ivan is a devoted husband who loves his wife very much. In fact, the main character considered the Duke to be a cold-blooded and calculating politician with a lack of feelings for others. And if everything turns out to be so, then Ivan wants to test Joanna's influence on his daughter, which is why he adopted someone else's child in spite of his beloved wife. But the cunning Fredia wanted to use this family only as a means of escaping from the orphanage. The young lady admires how knowledgeable her maid is. She says that she was only too glad to help. Leah asked her mistress if she wanted to know anything else, but the girl thought that this girl was the first one who treated her well, not counting those who wanted to take advantage of her. Fredia really hopes that they will remain as close as they are, but the closer she gets to her, the more influential her position in the mansion will become. The girl tells Leah that she must be afraid that others will hate her for being her maid. The maid, whose face has lost all joy, asks the mistress why she thinks so. The lady says it's because she's suddenly become a thorn in everyone's side in the palace. Even Catherine never said hello to her the entire time. Fredia began to give advice to her maid. If someone tries to annoy her for this reason, then she only needs to say that she is following orders. The girl even allows her maid to gossip about her if necessary. Leah doubted this, but the young lady consoled her by saying that no one here liked her anyway, so she did not need to suffer because of her. Suddenly the maid, barely holding back tears, asks her mistress not to talk like that. The main character was very surprised and puzzled by this reaction. Fredia asks her to stop crying, but Leah tearfully promises that she will never leave her alone. The maid supports the mistress in that even Lady Isabella said that sooner or later she would accept her as her own sister. The maid says that if Isabella recognizes her as a sister and the Duke loves Fredia, then she is sure that Lady Catherine will recognize her. But for the main character, her words seem too optimistic. After all, the Duke is simply using her, and Catherine will never accept her as his daughter. And it doesn't matter whether Isabella considers her sister or not, since Ivan will try to set her up with hares. This competition will alienate them, and it will turn out that there will not be the slightest opportunity for Leah's wishes to come true. The main character decides to put the escalating thoughts aside, because waiting will only cause her pain. The girl took a deep breath and promised the maid not to worry about this anymore. She came to terms with everything and allowed what would happen. As night fell, Fredia decided that she would think only about her happiness, because she did not want her life to be as terrible as the previous one. She is going to be happy, and she doesn't care what is required of her. All the same, in her opinion, there will be no one who will love her. The next day, the girl again went to have a meal in a luxurious dining room, but this time completely alone. Since Ivan is not at home and the rest of the family are avoiding her, the lady preparing to start the meal wishes herself a bon appétit. But the main character was very surprised when the Duke's daughter herself wanted to join her for a meal. Isabella asked her friend why she had such a surprised face, and if it was because she shouldn't be around her. Fredia says that this is not true at all. She just didn't expect to see her because she was sure that she would not want to share the same table with her. The heiress says that if this were so, she would easily forbid her to eat here. She is curious why the girl thinks she despises her. The orphan believes that it is all her fault, because she is sometimes stupid, to which she received silence and a puzzled look from her interlocutor. Isabella says that she is not avoiding her at all, but did not pay attention because she was busy earlier. The main character remembers that Ivan allowed her to eat as conveniently as possible, but the girl wonders, is it possible to behave this way in front of Mrs. Isabella? Still, she decides to try. Looking at the cutlery, the lady remembers that one fork is for the salad and the other for the main dish. The Duke's daughter noticed her friend's efforts and said that she had some table manners, to which she said that she was taught this at the orphanage. But Fredia admits that she was not trained as well as those who were taken into the noble family, so she still does not know much about table etiquette. The heiress was interested in the words that she was not taught as well as the others. The girl says that in fact, not everyone got the opportunity to study at the orphanage. Isabella's words surprised the heroine. She says that if other children were taught, but she was neglected, then she may well consider it unfair. Fredia says that many children become orphans, so people like her should be grateful that they were not thrown into the street at all. With a blinding smile, the young lady says that she never considered this to be unfair and never asked for anything more. The sudden silence from the heiress puzzled the girl, and when she asked what was wrong, she simply asked her to continue eating. Isabella promises her sworn sister to teach her all the rules of etiquette, but warns that she will not let her down. The main character found her promises slightly intimidating. The butler intervenes in the girls' conversation and warns them that the Duke has just returned to their home. The ladies immediately stood up from their chairs. Isabella tells Fredia that she should greet Ivan properly, to which she agrees. As soon as the man entered the room, a greeting was immediately heard from his daughter. The heiress, with the orphan standing behind her, says that they would have waited for him for dinner if they had known that he would return so early. Ivan tells his daughter that he didn't know she was here. He expresses his joy that she has finally left the walls of her room. When her father began to speak, a certain emotion of discomfort appeared on Isabella's face. When the Duke asked about Catherine, her daughter said that she still had a headache. My lord seemed to feel irritated by the fact that right now his wife should have a headache. The main character gritted her teeth awkwardly because the atmosphere around her became very heavy. While the Duke asked his subordinate to set the table for him as well, Fredia thought that perhaps the atmosphere was so tense because of her fault. Ivan noticed the downcast state of his adopted daughter and said that she should not feel guilty, after which he asked everyone to sit down at the table. But as soon as the man and children sat down on the chairs, the tense atmosphere made itself felt again. The main character decided to try to save the situation and asked His Serene Highness, that is, Ivan, how his day was. But Isabella reacted strangely to the fact that the Duke allowed the orphan to call him father, like his own daughter. Fredia noticed this and was worried. She was not going to call Ivan father until his daughter accepted her as her own sister. But the next moment the girl repeated her question, calling the man as he wanted, as if she had never doubted anything before. She says about herself that her day today was full of joy. The Duke clarifies what brought her joy. The heroine said that Mrs. Isabella taught her a lot, when she suddenly noticed that the heiress was nervous because her hands were shaking. Fredia thought that it was unpleasant for her to become close to Ivan, but she immediately denied it, since in this case her sister would openly express her feelings. Then the girl continued to say that Lady Isabella took care of her and told her many interesting stories. The Duke thoughtfully told his daughter that she seemed to have changed her mind, but she said that these were only short conversations, and this was because he himself ordered her to look after Fredia. Silence fell again between the gentlemen, which put the main character in an awkward position. She guesses that her father and Isabella are not so close. But suddenly the silence was interrupted by Ivan, who asked what his adopted daughter needed now. The heiress replied that first she needed dresses and shoes, as well as some accessories if she wanted. Isabella says that she gave the orphan her clothes, but they are not enough and they do not fit her. The main character is surprised that her friend shows in every way that she doesn't like her, but is still so attentive to her. Even asked Fredia if she needed anything else and asked her not to be shy, but to tell it like it is. She literally burst into flames at the possibility that she could get as many dresses as she wanted. Guided by the fact that the more the merrier, the girl with sparkling eyes said that she wanted a lot of beautiful outfits. A chuckle was heard from the Duke, which at first seriously alarmed and frightened Isabella. But it turned out that Ivan was sincerely happy about Fredia's words. He asks approximately how many dresses she wants. While the Duke's daughter looked at her dad in bewilderment, the heroine was even more happy. She thinks it's cool to be so rich. At first, the young lady modestly showed that she wanted 5 dresses, which caused mixed reactions from the others. Ivan seemed to laugh at her, and Fredia thought that she wanted too few clothes, so she shyly raised another finger up, saying that she wanted 6 dresses. But the next moment the girl caught herself thinking that she was too greedy, so she declared that 5 dresses would be enough for her. Suddenly, Isabella intervened. She says that she needs at least 15 dresses, and this is only for spring. According to her, hats, shoes, and capes will be needed because it is already getting cold outside. The main character almost became overwhelmed when she heard that they wanted to buy her as many as 15 dresses. She recalls that if you buy 10 ordinary t-shirts for 5,001, the price will be as much as 50,000. But here are luxurious dresses that are also handmade. The man is delighted by his daughter's comment. He tells Fredia that she will have a lot to learn from her. Ivan advises his adopted child to listen carefully to Bella's instructions, but does not insist on being as perfect as her. The Duke says that his daughter is more developed than 5 adults combined. The main character agreed with him and wanted to thank her friend for her help, but unexpectedly noticed one interesting detail. She couldn't even imagine that she would see Isabella so flushed. It seems that Ivan is a little overboard with his daughter's praise. Ivan said he had enough talking about clothes, so he asked his daughters if they liked the food. They replied that everything was simply incredible, and they liked the soup and desserts the most. After that, Fredia began to enthusiastically tell something. Suddenly, the heroine noticed that the situation had become calm, although her adoptive father was actually using her as bait. And Isabella is cold towards her and does not want to accept her as her real sister at all. But now they look like a family from the outside. Fredia thinks that it seems that everything is not so bad, and as long as she is not susceptible to this, pretending to be family will not be so problematic for her. It's as entertaining as playing a game. Sometime later, while practicing calligraphy in her office, Isabella remembers the words of the main character that not everyone has the opportunity to study. She also remembers how Fredia said that she was grateful simply for the roof over her head, so she had no particular reason to be upset. The heiress began to wonder what it would be like to live, suppressing her desires and trying to be at peace with herself. This is something she has never experienced. The girl remembers a moment from her childhood when her father tells her that she should always keep an eye on the forest. He says you need to always be on your guard. She may notice that the broad foliage hides rotting roots, and some trees may have been cut down by strangers. Ivan shows the child the forest and says that this is his creation, and she, as a future leader, should be able to notice changes in him. The man says that just as he tried to grow this forest for her, so she should do it for their people. The Duke asks his daughter to become a better leader than him, to which she agrees. But the grown-up Bella was surrounded by condemnation. She would become the head of the Weiss family, so she must be the best and study continuously. This is all said by her mother, who also adds that her father has high hopes for her, and each family teaches its successors differently. Bella has no choice but to agree that she must bear the weight of the crown in order to wear it. Catherine says that her father does not think about the issue of her success, believing that she will succeed. She asks her daughter to continue working in the same spirit. But Isabella is overcome by doubts. What if she is not smart enough, will not live up to expectations, or will not cope at all? The girl decides that she would rather give up on herself than disappoint everyone with her failure. But then Queen Joan appears in her life, who promises to make her the next queen, but warns that if she refuses and becomes the head of the family, she will have to carry everything on herself. Handing the girl a gift, Joanna says that if she becomes queen, she will be able to share her burden with her father, and other subjects. Inside the gift was a cake, and the ruler adds that there are other ways to make her family shine, and becoming queen is one of them. But someone angrily threw the sweets on the floor, shouting that they would never allow this to happen. One of Bella's parents says their daughter said she would rather marry a prince, while another doubts that this is her own desire. The girl overhears a conversation between her parents, where the father wonders who will inherit his title, and the mother tells him that her daughter is not a tool at all. The heiress is tormented by doubts. Will she do the right thing if she becomes queen? It seems there is no other way for her but to disappoint her father. Also, the young mistress doubts whether she is smart enough to glorify her father. At one point, Bella realizes that she has so many responsibilities that it is not even possible to understand the experiences of the main character. The lady smiled as she remembered Fredia, who said she was happy because she taught her a lot. The Duke's daughter thinks the girl is wonderful and strange. She assumes that she will never be able to fully understand her. Even Ivan was shocked by her at first, but Isabella had not seen him smile as widely as that time when he spoke to Fredia for a long time. The heiress remembers her father's words that she is worth any 5 adults, and then blushes. She wonders if he always thinks of her this way. Bella decides to collect her thoughts. She reminds herself that this doesn't mean she likes Fredia or anything like that. But in her opinion, this girl's ignorance in some things spoils the family's reputation. It's time for Isabella to roll up her sleeves. The next day, the main character screams with joy that shopping day has finally arrived, and for once she has time alone on the street. While in a moving carriage on the way to a shopping street, Fredia tells Bella that she could go shopping herself. She says that she was assigned to look after her, and if she buys something tasteless, her father will be very unhappy with her. The heiress asks her friend to tell her what she is going to buy, and she will consider her wishes. Fredia instantly lit up with happiness, but the mistress asked her to speak quickly before she changed her mind. The orphan admits that she really wants to buy something that she has had her eye on for a long time, and that she has wanted for a very long time. And this thing is a magical hair dye, a mysterious potion brewed by a sorcerer. Since it is magical, the color can disappear from the hair after a while. Therefore, the paint is popular among those who want to change their image. Leah told the main character that Isabella had mint hair in the family portrait because she used magic dye. The mistress says that painting with magic quickly went out of fashion, but for Fredia, they can arrange this, which she was very happy about. But before the Duke's daughter had even started shopping, Fredia asks her not to buy all the things she looked at with interest. Isabella began to buy everything and in large quantities, which her named sister looked at for more than 3 seconds. She bought hats, bows, earrings, and even a wonderful crystal ball, which she didn't even understand how to use. Cakes, cookies, and pies were the cheapest thing that the lady took with her. One day, Bella invited Fredia to look at 2 earrings made of precious stones and say if she liked any of them. Not a sound was heard from her in response, but the heiress ordered the servant to pack the earrings, and, with his permission, he would take everything that was in the store. The main character became dizzy from such luxury. She tried with all her might to hint to the girl that she did not need extra jewelry, but Isabella ordered her to keep quiet and learn from her example, because a member of the Weiss family couldn't let such a small amount of money upset him. She says that it is their duty to spend money to the last penny, and for someone like her, it is a sin to be stingy. The orphan is deeply shocked by her words, although she herself believes that spending money was also a sin for her. An elderly grandmother approaches the girls and says that she has prepared delicious tarts today, after which Bella asks her to pack 5 of each with her. Fredia decided that this was too much, so she screamed that they wouldn't have time to eat so many sweets and they would spoil, and the money would go down the drain. The heiress says that these treats are also intended for the servants. She is going to share with everyone, especially after the problems they experienced due to the fiasco. The main character began to think seriously, and the servants who prepared the tarts were touched by the kindness of their mistress. Fredia realized that Isabella really cared about everyone around her, and she caused many people in the palace a lot of problems. The Duke's daughter remembered Karen's servant and said that she scolded her greatly, so now she will never try to harm the orphan again. The heroine was happy about this, but wondered if this meant that she was one of those whom Bella cared about. Then the girl asks permission if she can choose gifts for Leah, to which the lady gives her consent. Fredia is surprised that she's having a snack while sitting at a table in a rich salon, but he was more surprised. Bella said that she arranged the entire building for this. The girl says that it is inherent in her that she wants to see all the store owners focusing on her. The main character was dumbfounded that they were now talking as equals, to which she suggested that she really seemed hopeless. The heiress explains that the only people in this state above the Weiss family are the royal family. Isabella asks the girl to remember this fact well forever, because everyone knows about it. Fredia marveled that her friend could say such things without even blinking. She agreed with her, thinking that just a little more and she would fall in love with her. After the servant showed up and said that all preparations were completed, Bella ordered the heroine to move on, to which she happily agreed. The young lady almost dropped her jaw when she saw the luxurious room filled with rich and beautiful clothes. She asked if she was really allowed to choose something here, but instead of answering, Isabella began to say what dress they would take for spring, what shoes they would buy for dancing and a picnic, and each pair in 7 colors. While looking at the shoes, the Duke's daughter decided to take a pair of shoes for herself because she didn't want anyone else to get them. Fredia was very surprised by this. She doesn't understand how such a reason could be a reason to waste money. The heroine asked the lady if her father would be angry with them for spending so much, calling him Duke Weiss. Isabella recalls that Ivan asked to be called father. She says that she is obedient in front of him, but as soon as she is allowed to, she ignores his orders. The girl was surprised by the claims made against her, so she immediately apologized. But Fredia was absolutely amazed when Isabella, doubtful, said that she could call her. She checked with Bella, and she said that since they were calling the same person father, addressing her as mistress began to irritate her. The heiress allows the orphan to call her sister, once she gets used to everything. The main character thought about the fact that a stranger might think that Isabella liked her. But she does not forget that the only reason her sworn sister is helping her is because of the Duke's order. The girl took a deep breath and reminded herself that she was simply being used here, although she was close to forgetting about it. Isabella asked why she did not answer, and immediately after that Fredia smiled sweetly and called her sister. Bella reminded the heroine of an important thing, which again brought her into a stupor. Her father said that she could take whatever she wanted, otherwise he would be angry. The heiress asks her to go and try everything on, if she understood correctly what they are doing here. Fredia readily agreed and rushed to the fitting room, telling her sister that it wouldn't take much time. Left alone, the Duke's daughter plunged into deep thoughts about the fact that now, a previously stranger to her, joyfully calls her sister.